I'm going to call the meeting order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take a moment of silence. Thank you. Begin with the roll call, beginning with myself. I'm here. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Culberson?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
We are all here and accounted for. Before we begin the public comment, please make sure you silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. Thank you. Okay, public comment on agenda items. We have first up Wes Baker.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning. Leavenworth County Government. My name is Wes Baker, Stranger Township, Leavenworth County. I have some comments this morning that may seem a bit critical, but in essence, they're factual comments about the tenets of democracy. Democracy in the United States, Leavenworth County, Stranger Township, and they're pretty fundamental to my takeaway of what government is supposed to do in representation of its people. I'm a resolute American. I'm a resolute Leavenworth County citizen. And I try to keep an eye on what affects citizens in Leavenworth County. That's my mission. The citizens of Leavenworth County expect building codes and statutes to be enforced as normal and legal conduct by their government every day, all the time. That's what the citizens expect. Everybody in this room is a citizen. They have the same understanding I do, I suspect. The citizens expect the statutes and building codes enforced by Leavenworth County to prevail and prevent, this is an important part, prevent erosion of the legitimacy of Leavenworth County government and prevent a precedent allowing circumvention of governing statutes and building codes in Leavenworth County. Pretty straightforward, pretty fundamental. Will the elected officials and Leavenworth County government perform their sworn duties to uphold the statutes of Leavenworth County and validate or invalidate the legitimacy of Leavenworth County, the BOCC, and Leavenworth County government? Thank you very much. I appreciate your indulgence.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay, next we have Chip DeMoss.
I spoke to you last week, and I was up here again. I called Becky to ask if I could be put on the agenda. So I think I'd rather speak when the agenda item comes up, if that's all right.
Okay, that's
I don't
fine.
really need to be in public comment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Administrative business. Mark, David, do you have something?
Madam Chair, members of the County Commissioners, to the public, I'd like to introduce Ms. Misty Brown. After quite a lengthy search and due diligence, Mr. Laughrey and I have managed to corral her in to serve as county counselor. I'm senior county counselor. I believe she's met each of you individually, but I'd like to introduce her to the public. She's eminently qualified for this position. I would suggest that you trust her opinion given to you as you would trust mine. And
I don't know to go that far. Okay.
I just want to officially welcome her to service to the public of the County of Leavenworth.
Absolutely. Welcome. Welcome, Missy.
Thank you.
Now
Mark?
speech.
No speech.
Darn.
Do you have anything, Mark?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Commissioners, April is, as we know, Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we've recognized that, but it's also Kansas County Government Month, and also at the national level, it's County Government Month. But the governor has passed a proclamation naming it as Kansas County Government Month, and basically that just recognizes the folks who work in county government across the state and all they do to contribute to the quality of life in the areas that they serve. And I just wanted to take this minute to also recognize our county employees and what a great job they do and how appreciative I am of each and every one of them and of the elected officials as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
I wanna
thank you
make
to
a
all of
comment
our
on that.
employees.
Uh,
Stephen?
I want to pass on a comment and compliment to the roads department. My wife was pulling out of our driveway, and she said, "I just cannot believe how well they maintain the roads with all the weather and how it's been changing, hot, cold, rain, even snow, and the roads have been really good, and especially in our area. Appreciate it. Appreciate the work of the road department, all the departments of the county, but I'm calling out the public works. Thank you."
Good job.
Yep. Yes, they do.
Anybody else have anything for administrative business today?
That's one thing I just, I don't know which counselor to ask, but could you give us a definition of serial meeting?
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Smith, under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, the default position, actually the stated public policy is that all deliberative meetings of governmental bodies in the state of Kansas will be open to the public. That really means that there are no secret conferences that would serve as determinative decisions made by this body or any other governmental body. With respect to you, because there are 5 members and 3 constitutes a quorum, 2 of you, under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, can confer among yourselves on a matter of county business. 2 of you. When that 3rd is introduced to that discussion, you now have a meeting. Serial meeting would be one of you contacting another, one of you contacting another, one of you contacting another. When that 3-person level is reached, you have created a meeting. Perhaps not all at the same time contemporaneously, but if you do it in a serial fashion, it's a serial meeting, and that is prohibited by law, and you should avoid it. And you should be conscious of the risk of having that inadvertently. So my caution to you is that if members of the public wish to confer with you individually, make certain that you inquire if that person has contacted any other commissioner.
Yeah.
Because if you inadvertently have one person, say a member of the public, contact 3 of you on the same topic and exchange information as to your thoughts on the matter, you potentially have a serial meeting and a violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Better safe than sorry.
That's a great question, because a lot of people don't understand that they tend to think that, not a lot, but a good majority, that if 3 people get together and meet with a citizen, then it's a violation. They do not understand, because I've had to counsel some meetings or not discuss them, that the same thing applies when one citizen comes up and meets with you, and that same citizen meets with another commissioner. Now, once that's done, then you can't go any further. So sometimes citizens think we don't want to meet with them, when it's not the case. I've already met with my limit as far as I can go. But the point is, sometimes we got to make sure we're communicating with each other and make sure we're not setting those up like that. So that's an excellent point. But I just want to make sure it's clear to the citizens. It's not that we don't want to talk to you. That's once we get that quota or that limit, we're done.
I think the same thing applies to when individuals contact the BOCC as a whole, and we have to be careful as well on issues that it's a lot of times we may not answer an email that it comes through the BOCC email system. No, if it's not my constituent from my district, normally I won't reply because I want to make certain that one of the other commissioners has not replied as well, because even if we can't reply all for sure. That absolutely establishes a serial contact type thing, but we have to make certain that we have not had a response to an individual unknowingly as well. So there's a lot that we have to be careful with, not to violate open meetings. So,
if I could expand upon Commissioner Mike Smith's comments, public input is invited by this body. You have an email system, BOCC. You've got a website that allows contact with you. People can actually use the traditional snail mail and actually send you the rare letter, and people are invited to come to these meetings. It may appear to be inconvenient. It may appear to be contrived that you can't, as a body, begin to individually discuss matters with a member of the public, but it's Kansas law. And the purpose of that is to ensure that decisions made by this body are made out in the open in public.
So that's why a lot of times when it appears that we haven't talked about something and we kind of look shocked at each other is because literally we have not spoken with each other about what subject is coming up. So
I have one more if you have time.
Sure, go ahead.
The legislature's getting ready to go on a 2-week break, I believe, here with Good Friday. Is wondering if the board felt that maybe we should invite them in for an update on what's going on, because there is some legislation out there, I think, that could impact our county greatly. And I'd like maybe them to explain it to us if they would be willing to come.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I have no problem, especially with some of the things I'm seeing right now when it relates to property tax and issues that Leavenworth County or 3 other counties may get stuck with. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Could we ask someone to reach out to all of them for like next Wednesday? You think that's too short notice?
We'll send out an invite.
Okay.
When are they out of session?
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think tomorrow's the last day.
The sooner we get them up here, the better, I think.
I'd sure like an update. Because
I did speak to Senator Tyson and Senator Pittman this morning, and they said that this is going to be coming up tomorrow or even today. And I just brought up that if you're going to impact the counties like this so significantly, you should include an amendment to put a pilot check on while this legislation exists to offset this property tax loss, and then you'll see how expensive this is. And they said they would really like us to reach out to the KAC on this and take out our position, but to communicate with them through maybe through Mark Lawfrey, our position on this is that we're all for, everyone here is for veterans.
Yes.
This is the veterans.
Absolutely.
But if you
I'm also here for little old ladies on a fixed income that can't pay the property tax, and we will have to increase their property tax.
So they need to amend the bill to offset the tremendous loss for especially 4 counties, which would be Leavenworth, Gary, Riley, and Sedgwick, where the military presence is so felt. So I don't know how we communicate that or what, but this is coming up right away.
Mark, do you have anything that you could give us any insight on how this impacts our county as a whole? Because I think the people need to understand why the Board of County Commissioners for Leavenworth and some of the other counties
We are already impacted by enough exemptions.
Commissioners, I do. I was going to save it to the end of the meeting under presentations and discussions, but I can go over it now if you'd like.
You want to do it now or after?
It's up to you. You're the chairperson.
Madam Chair,
It's come up.
what's your
Well,
pleasure?
since it's come up, we may as well go ahead and do it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Soapbox. Just so you know.
Soapbox, go ahead.
Make sure that's on. Commissioners, this week actually was immediately following our meeting of last week. I was made aware of legislation that's been submitted in the House. It's House Bill number 2036, and that's what you're referring to now. And basically what's being proposed is that veterans with the disability have a sliding scale of waiving of property taxes. It's not income based, it's disability based. And what it states is that any veteran who is between, let's say, 30 and 50% gets a percentage of their property taxes waived, and if they have between 50 and 70%, it goes up. So in Leavenworth County, I can't speak for the other counties, and again, it's tough to get the definite number of what this would impact us. But in Leavenworth County, according to the Census Bureau, we have 9,000 veterans, give or take, living in the county. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, 27% of all veterans have some form of service-related disability. So of those 27%, 77% have more than a 30% disability. And I know that's a lot of numbers, but what that means basically is over 77% of the veterans that live in Leavenworth County, of the 9,000 veterans, would qualify for some form of property tax abatement. Depending upon their level of disability. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, 50% of disabled veterans have a 60% or higher disability, service-related disability, which would qualify them for somewhere between 90 and 100% of their property taxes being abated. Just looking at what that means to Leavenworth County, not the other taxing entities, because each one has a different mill levy, so I'm just looking at our portion of their property taxes for the folks. The impact for Leavenworth County, based on an average house valuation of what the county has, is somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million in property taxes that would be abated via this new legislation. This legislation, again, it has no income basis for the abatement. It has no way for the county to recover what the lost revenue is. And it's not, like we've said before, when you're abating taxes from a group of people, you're not abating taxes. You're shifting taxes to some other group of people. So if you take roughly 10% of our population are veterans in the county, and half of them at least are going to get some kind of abatement, you're taking 5% of our people off the tax rolls. The income that we're going to lose from this is probably around 6% because of the values of homes that we have no way of recovering except for increasing taxes on the remaining folks, the other 95% of the people who live in the county. That's the only way they're giving us to recover this lost revenue.
So
when you go about abating taxes, maybe they should consider abating taxes that impact their budget, because it doesn't impact their budget, it impacts our budget. So when you're giving away someone else's money, think twice about it and quit taking credit for giving away our money without giving us a way to recover that money. I've talked to a few of my neighbors who are veterans. They don't understand where this is coming from. Not that they wouldn't take advantage of it, because who wouldn't? It's tax law, you take advantage of it. But they didn't ask for it, they don't need it, and they're wondering why they definitely don't want to put their share of taxes on their neighbors. So I don't think it's well thought out legislation, and I hope that the Senate, it passed the House like 123 to 1 or 124 to 1. And I just hope that the Senate takes a little time to review this and review how that impacts the county.
And this is all personal property tax, including vehicles.
Well, service members already have 2 vehicles exempt from taxation via state statute. That happened a few years back. Retired income is not taxed for military folks in the state of Kansas, so they already don't pay the income tax on their retiree benefits or their disability benefits. And if they receive more than 30% disability from the government, they receive a disability payment from the government as well. So, again, we love our veterans. Mm-hmm. Respect our veterans. While I don't like to lump myself in with all these guys who have retired, I am a veteran, but it's not about that. This is not about that. This is about we have to stop shifting taxes from one group to a much smaller group. It's a lot easier when we're all pulling the load than it is when half of us aren't. And it's amazing to me that time and time again they keep throwing these things out there without considering the implications on local government.
So there's 34,000 parcels in the county? Mm-hmm. Okay, so out of the 9,000, not everybody would have a parcel, I guess. But, I mean, there's several ways to look at the numbers here.
I didn't calculate that at 100%. I did not calculate that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, you're close to a third if everybody had a parcel. So.
Yeah.
And then when we consider that we're only existing on property taxes off of 60% instead of 100%, you are really continuing to increase the burden on a shrinking population of residents and taxpaying people in Leavenworth County.
And we don't know the number. So
I have one other thing on that. And I know that it's been tossed out there that the House also voted to reinstate LAVTR to offset this loss. It's tough because we don't know how much our LAVTR share would be, and we also aren't 100% sure what this waiver would be. But the House didn't vote to reinstate the LAVTR. What they voted was to not extend the waiving of the LAVTR that they haven't been paying us. Current statute 79-2959 would re-implement the LAVTR in 2025 without any intervention at the state level. The legislation that was proposed that they voted to strike that language was to extend that to 2026. So they were just going to, the new legislation was adding a year to them not paying us the LAVTR that they owe us. What they've done is say, okay, well, we're not going to add that year, but that doesn't reinstate the LAVTR until 2025, giving them 2 more opportunities to change their mind, which they have done at every occasion.
Yeah, every year.
Like I keep harping on.
I would sure just like to meet with them, and maybe they haven't. Maybe they can answer our questions how we'll get through this. Because I don't have the answers other than increasing the mill levy. I don't want to do that.
Commissioners, there's a couple other bills out there that, if you will entertain them now or later.
Let's go ahead. Let's
Okay.
put it out there.
I'll keep on.
I just before you move on to another bill, on the other, you sent us an email on a very conservative estimate of what it would cost Leavenworth County alone. Can you tell us what that was?
Yeah, that's the $1.5 to $2 million, very conservative, depending on how many people claim it and how many people actually own property. I think, as Commissioner Smith pointed out, it could be, they could be as high as 40% of our parcels owned by veterans. I just took it based on population. So somewhere between 50 and 75% of the veterans that are in the county probably own property that would be then exempt from property taxes. So that's the number I'm using. If it was 100%, it would be much higher. If 100% of the veterans that are disabled and qualified took advantage and own property. That's also
and that's for the county alone. That doesn't
just the county's portion.
Include school districts, cities.
It's probably 3 to 4 times that number if you look at the other taxing entities. I shouldn't say probably. It would definitely be, because we're typically around 25 to 30% of someone's tax bill. So if 25 to 30% of the tax bill is $2 million, do the math, it would be considerably higher to all of the other taxing entities.
So if this goes through, I think it's fair to say taxes are going to go up in Leavenworth County.
I don't see how they couldn't.
That's exactly correct. And I think Commissioner Smith has something.
One thing, so the public understands this about and I always like to use things that are a little humorous because sometimes it gets across better. Them, even though they reinstate and say they're going to give us back these taxes, is like everybody's watched Charlie Brown when he's getting ready to kick that football. And all of a sudden, the last second, pull up. They've been doing it for years. Folks, it's no different. I'm sorry. I don't trust that we will get our money back no matter what they put, because they really can't tell you what future elected people are going to do. You just can't do it. So I have a real tough time with that. I love the veterans. God, my dad did 30 years. I'm an Army brat.
Mine too.
But to put this out on just the folks, it should be income-based. There should be some other thought process before we do this.
Or, we've been hearing this, that we're losing $500 million, or the state's losing $500 million.
Where?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to pay property tax. I don't see where we're losing anything.
Okay, you wanted to continue for us, please?
We got off in the weeds,
Right.
but this is very important.
It is, but I wanted Mark to go ahead and continue on the other bills that we have pending.
Well, a couple other bills that have been brought up about property tax relief. Again, this particular bill is property tax relief. Again, when we're talking about property tax relief, we're talking about it at the expense of local municipalities. The state only levies 1.5 mils. So when they grant property tax abatements, they're granting the local property tax abatement. The 1.5 mil is nothing compared to your normal tax bill, right? So in this case, it's Senate Bill 252, where they are trying to level the playing field for local businesses that have to compete against government entities. We've talked about this one before. It keeps moving forward. They have made some amendments to it so that it would only be new competing entities at the government level, so existing government facilities wouldn't be counted against you.
They call it the Genesis bill.
Well, it's basically if a governmental entity provides a service that a private sector is also providing, that's considered competition. Since the governmental entity doesn't pay taxes, they're submitting legislation that the private entity also would no longer pay property taxes. In theory, I guess that sounds good. I don't know. But again, it's a property tax shift. We're taking more people off the tax rolls. And also, it impacts all taxing entities. Even though you may not have a choice at the county level, if a city decides to compete with a private business, our taxes would also be exempt. Schools the same way. So it's not the entity that creates the competition, it's all taxing entities lose their ability to collect property taxes. So the change they made was that it was just future conflicts, which is better because, as we stated before, every concession stand in a high school could be considered competing with a convenience store or a restaurant, so they would all then be tax exempt, which would probably eliminate, I'm conservatively 75% of the commercial properties in the state would probably get some kind of exemption because of that. The answer is not taking people off the tax rolls. That's not how you lower property taxes. That's how you increase property taxes on everybody who's still there, which is primarily residential. So
if that bill develops, all rental property will be exempt because Michael's Housing on Fort Leavenworth now rents to the public. You don't have to even work on Fort Leavenworth. You can live on post in Michael's Housing, and the VA rents to the public. So those are in competition to local rental people. So this bill has a potential to get way bigger.
It's potential. And again, there's no financial impact tied to it. They don't demonstrate what the financial impact to local governments are when they are considering
They don't demonstrate that they've thought through anything.
Well, I would just like to be able to visit on a mid-session, have them see what their take is and how they can help us out, because we're going to need help.
I think that my understanding is that one of our legislators in a separate meeting declared, when asked about how the bills that are being proposed would, how they were going to be paid for, his response was, the counties are just going to have to raise the mill. This was one of our elected officials at the state level that made that comment.
And we would just to
that's
stay
correct.
But it's still, this is at the same time that the state is telling us
Revenue
that we
neutral.
want have
Well, he's right. We would have to
legislation.
raise the mill to remain revenue.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
That kind of
No,
money.
I'm just saying, but it's the hypocrisy is just astounding to me.
And I'm okay if they give us a pilot for it,
If.
Give us some money,
Give us-
make up the difference.
And I
Yeah,
think
give us a
that's what we
pilot
need
one
to
year and
make
be
clear
taking the
that
next.
We need to make clear to the legislators that's what we're requesting. If you're going to do this, we're for
got
veterans,
that.
but we need to have a pilot to offset this, or you're going to devastate the governments of Leavenworth County, the local
Well,
governments.
right.
And the
Okay,
school
and then there's
districts,
a
and the
third bill.
townships, and the cities.
So the last bill, I wasn't even really watching it because it doesn't impact local revenue. It's an income tax abatement. But one of the representatives that I was sharing my concerns about the veterans exemption, when I was sharing with them, they sent back this bill to me saying, "Well, look at all the great tax relief that we're accomplishing." So, I mean, they just brought it to my attention. I definitely was not watching it, and it's Senate Bill 169. And what 169 is allegedly accomplishing is income tax relief to the citizens of Kansas. So again, taxes are complicated. It could be, depending on what your deductions are and your write-offs are, it could vary. But just simple tax calculations here. The median income in Kansas for an individual is about $35,000. Household income is just under $70,000. That's the median. Midway. That's half the people who are making wages are making somewhere around that, and half are making more than that. What the legislators are proposing is that this is a tax relief on income tax. So they've reduced the income tax for everybody. However, when I do the comparison, people who make under $30,000 individually or $60,000 in a household get no tax break from what they've proposed. It looks good on paper, but it basically it's $1 or zero change in what your income tax would be based on today's numbers versus the proposed numbers. If you make over $60,000 in a household or over $30,000 as an individual, you start to see some savings, because it's basically it goes to a 5.25% tax, which is half a percent less than what you currently pay. When you get to the higher income, obviously, because you're saving more on the higher level, you get much more of a savings. So somebody making let's say $120,000 would save $405 on income tax. That's not significant, but that'd be the difference between maybe paying in and not paying in. But the people who are above that start to see a greater increase. So the median income, the lowest earning wage folks in the state would get no tax break. Those who make more would see a tax break. But that's the small portion of this. That wasn't the one that caught my eye. What did catch my eye is the group that's going to get the largest tax break, a 28% tax reduction, are banks and savings and loans and places where you deposit your money. A 28% tax reduction. Now, banks don't pay property tax. They pay based on the revenue going through their banks. They were being taxed at 2.25%. This proposed legislation drops them down to 1.625%, which again is a 28% savings. So when we're talking about
They must
tax
be
relief,
struggling. They're struggling.
Paid lobbyists do
Watch.
that.
That's what it is.
Folks need to
Paid
watch
lobbyists.
what's happening in Topeka. They need to watch this legislation. I know it's nearly a full-time job. I spent a lot of time over the last 5 days reviewing these and trying to calculate how it might impact the county.
And I appreciate that.
And it's not that we're trying to be hypercritical of the folks in Topeka. It's just take into consideration, has any of them done the math on what this actually means to the local government, or in this case, to the people who they claim they're providing the tax breaks for. We're going to waive sales tax on food because the people who are most greatly impacted are the low-wage earners. So we're going to waive sales tax on food, and they're patting themselves on the back for that. But we're going to give the people who have the higher income a much bigger tax break than the people who are, again, the low-wage earners. So
Kind of says it all, doesn't it?
yeah, that's again, you can get me started, but it's hard to get me stopped.
That's
So
kind of the way I'm sorry I opened that up.
No, I'm not.
No, it's okay.
Oh,
Mr.
a
Stevens?
couple more comments on, I would just say that good intentions, but unintended consequences.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. These are all, the legislators that go to Topeka, they have good intentions. This all sounds really good, but
This is a reverse Robin Hood effect. Steal from the poor and give to the rich.
and there's one bill that we did not talk about that Senator Tyson is running either today or tomorrow, and with, I think Senator Pittman is also supportive, and I hope the rest of our legislators, but it's a constitutional amendment that would limit property taxes to the 3%, kind of what we've talked about, and they are going to try to run that. They came one vote short. They had 26 votes. You have to have 27 in the Senate. They think they found another vote or two. So I hope that is the type of change that would put it on the ballot and would be real property tax change. And
how many years down the road would that take?
well, they've been wasted. It hasn't happened up to now.
Well, you mean if it goes on the ballot, it'd be in 24,
And then it would go into effect.
probably 26, because you got to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, but at least we're
And by then,
moving that
everybody
way.
changes.
I don't know how we get them to understand that adding more groups exemptions is not the answer to the problem. The problem is the system itself. We're going to have to raise the mill levy about 5 mills on everybody else that's not in this exempt group. So I don't understand.
And there's other very sympathetic groups. There's police officers that have been disabled. There's railroad workers that have been disabled. There's
Firefighters.
nurses and firefighters. I mean, once you start adding all the groups, nobody's going to be paying property taxes.
I think we're heading there pretty quick.
Which is fine, but then there has to be another source of revenue.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
it's-
You noticed
it is still
Missouri's
possible.
elections last night, didn't you?
I didn't
All
watch
that additional sales tax on the recreational, everybody's wanting that tax dollar.
Okay, well, if we don't
All
have
right.
anything further, is that?
Yeah, we probably ought to get on that. We've got a lot of folks
Okay.
here that had to sit through this,
Let's move
and I
on.
apologize.
Well, but it's educational.
Yes, it is.
I'm glad we had an audience for this discussion.
Let's move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, if not, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries. All right. We're down to formal board action. Here to consider a motion to approve the authority to award contract commitment of funds for KDOT project bridge replacement grant for Bridge ST 100.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Commissioners, today for your consideration, we do have the approval of the award contract for commitment of funds for KDOT for the project on Fairmount Road. The project is just west of 175th Street there on Fairmount. When the project was originally granted by KDOT, the engineer's estimate based on KDOT bid tabs was $979,000. It was an 80-20 grant, with the county responsible for 20% of those costs. Over the next 6 months, inflation increased. We did a supplemental agreement with KDOT based upon the new numbers that came out in the cost estimates of approximately $1.25 million. Subsequently, we waited another 6 months while it was in design and followed the KDOT bid letting schedule and got the project out as soon as possible. And by the time we came to actually bid the project, inflation had increased the cost to $1.524 million. This increase is not going to be covered by KDOT supplemental agreement. I think across the state, they had an average cost increase of 18% over the engineer's estimates from the third quarter, which was the last year engineer's estimates. This project obviously went up $565,000 in cost over the course of 18 months. We did have 2 bids. They were competitive, very close to each other. Ebert Construction was the low bidder on the project as KDOT opened the bids. So we do have $1 million to contribute, to be contributed by KDOT local projects towards it. And it has increased The county has required funding from $317,000 to $637,000.
We used to build bridges for $600,000.
Used to is
Our
not
share.
today.
Yeah, so it's costing us, the whole project used to be $600,000. I'd say we better hurry up and get this one passed, because we're going to be running out of money for bridges real quick, like the cost of this keeps going like this. So if you're ready for a motion, I move that we award the contract, commit the funds for KDOT Bridge Project Replacement Grant for Bridge ST 100 on Fairmount Road.
Second.
Motion and a second. I'll begin voting with, unless there's further discussion. Okay. Begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank
I
you,
have a
Bill.
question for Bill.
Oh.
What, any other, with all these funding, infrastructure legislation and the base legislation and any other potential sources for additional grant funding for bridges that you're seeing?
No, they did just put out a call for projects with KDOT, which usually goes to once a year, and I believe they've moved that letting up, or the letting of the grants up. So we do have the application that we can turn in for the off-system and the local bridge program, which is due by the end of May. I believe it was May 26th that we have to have those applications in by. But from a federal perspective, I have not seen anything that we would qualify for. We don't meet a lot of the criteria for federal bridges. We're not in those type of areas that we would qualify for that funding. So we do have that upcoming KDOT one. But other than that, I have not seen any funding opportunities that, from an infrastructure standpoint, that we qualify for.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on. Consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-4, a special use permit for Whiskey Ridge Event Center located at 19051 Tonganoxie Drive. And I believe that the applicant's representative would like to speak before we...
If I may, please. Thank you. Commissioners, I was here before you last week, and you conditionally approved the special use permit. We had a verbal agreement with the Stranger Township Fire Department that I presented to you last week, where they were going to provide a fire truck and at least 2 off-duty or fire personnel to conduct the fire watch. Most fire watches, from the research I've done, and even their original contract that they submit when fire watches are done, usually provide for private citizens to conduct the fire watch. They basically have to walk around, make sure whether or not there's any fires or anything like that, know how to use a fire extinguisher, and then have a cell phone ready so they can call dispatch or the fire department directly if they see a fire and to tell people to evacuate. What we had planned to do was use the fire department, Stranger Township Fire Department, and their personnel. We had an agreement like that. I drafted a more specific agreement that tailored specifically what was our agreement, I thought. Sent it to my client, they sent it on over to the fire chief. He had a couple comments that he wanted to charge the FEMA rates for the fire truck, which was totally fine with my people. I revised the contract, sent it over, and then during that interim, before it got signed, my understanding that I believe Mr. Wes Baker, I think it's probably the same gentleman that spoke earlier.
We don't want to do names, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, a citizen, excuse me, I'm sorry. A citizen had called the fire chief and had a conversation with them. And basically, now all of a sudden, the fire chief got cold feet and said, we're going to back off and can't do it. We didn't, we still had
Was it the fire chief or was it the township board?
My understanding is that the phone call was to the fire chief, and then he took it to the board, the fire board.
And was it that body that made the decision, or was it the chief?
That I'm not sure about.
Okay.
That I don't know. You know, I think it's the board, but I'm not sure. Okay. After I think they had some discussion with it, but initially my understanding was fire chief saying, I don't know if I really want to touch this, not get it, and then took it to the board. After that was my understanding. Okay. As we discussed last week, my clients had a function, a wedding, not a reception, but a shower scheduled for Sunday. They scrambled trying to figure out what to do. They found a fire truck that was fully functional. It was used by a private company that had bought a 1993 fire truck because the city of Overland Park required them to have one on site because they had incendiary business as part of their tree service. And they got rid of that side of their business, so they ended up putting it up for sale. My clients went out and bought that fully functional fire truck, took it to the site, hired a couple of off-duty firemen from other townships. They've got 6 other firemen or 6 firemen total from either Lawrence, Topeka, or some other townships that are available and fully trained that have agreed to act as fire watch personnel. So basically what I'm proposing today is we didn't meet specifically what I proposed was going to be done with the Stranger Township Fire Department, providing the fire truck and also providing the fire personnel. But we have a fully functional fire truck. It has an 800-gallon tank. It runs, the compressor works, everything works on it. And we have off-duty fire personnel, so it's not going to draw from anything from the county or the Stranger Township Fire Department. So all I'm asking today is that the very specific portions of the conditional special use permit that deal with using the Stranger Township Fire Department be changed to just allow it to be, my client's truck and fire department personnel from other departments. And since we're not asking for the whole thing to be changed, just those specifics.
We required insurance, as I recall, Counselor, was it $1 million or so? There was an insurance policy that had to go along with this SUP, temporary. Is that correct?
The condition for the SUP is a $1 million policy.
And as far as I think that's a couple.
Go ahead.
As far as the truck itself, it's been inspected. It runs. We've used it to test it that it's going to perform. Should there be a thing? Was there any kind of warranty with it? Was there anything that goes along with this?
No warranty that I'm aware of.
What I'm warning you is that when you turn it on, it's going to pump water.
Well, they sent out firemen from basically some of these firemen, these volunteers that were going to help them out and be paid by them to test it before they bought it. They went out. It's a full-size fire truck.
Yeah, I've seen the picture. I just want to make sure. The other thing is you've got more than 2 certified firefighters in case one can't make it to show up.
6.
We have 6. Okay.
And they may look into even further, larger numbers than that just to check because, as you know, a lot of firefighters are 24 on, 48 off.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's 24 on, they can't do it, but if they're on the 48 off.
But they're certified firefighters.
Yes. And
EMTs, paramedics.
I read the list. I just want to make sure they're up to date on this. Okay.
Yes, they're working.
I've got copies of some of their certifications with me if you wanted to see them or present them. What I put in that letter.
Yeah, I had a constituent from my district that works for fire department in Kansas City contact me and asked me to pose this question: Has there been a pumper test certification done on the truck? That's required when a fire.
Not since we've had permission. Not since we've had possession of it.
Well, every fire station, district, and fire department, they do that once a year on a pumper truck. That it has to be certified. Do you?
We can have that done. The guy lives in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and we would be happy to bring him up and have him do that certification if that's what's required.
But to your knowledge, at this time, it's not certified.
I don't know for that. I do not know. I do not know the answer to that. But it's my understanding the people they bought it from, the company had to have it certified for Overland Park because they were within the city limits of Overland Park. It's my understanding from looking at the Facebook page, I think the truck was only for sale for 45 days or so. So my guess is they probably had it certified as required by law, whatever Overland Park would have required.
It's not unusual for a fire truck to be sold to a smaller city or something of that nature. That's common practice all the time because fire vehicles are so expensive. But I think knowing that it's been working functionally, like Commissioner Stevens saying, is a valid point.
And we're happy to get that done. That's not a problem. We'll get that certified as quickly as we can. But like I said, the firemen that know how to use it did go out and inspect it before they bought it because they didn't want to buy something that's not going to work.
Well, why don't we go to another, I mean, I would feel personally more comfortable if it was a fire, certified, like a fire district, or, I mean, I thought that's the arrangement we had come to.
That's exactly what I proposed, because that's what the agreement was verbally, okay, until something blew up in our face unexpectedly at the last minute.
Have we
okay?
checked with any other districts?
Well, apparently the word has gotten out that nobody wants to offer that. So we checked around with a couple of other districts here in the county. Apparently they've all been spoken with, and nobody wants that kind of PR. So even though they, we've spoken with most of the chiefs, and they've all told us that they do fire watches all the time for private citizens. So this really isn't any different than doing a fire watch, while somebody's doing a controlled burn or something. But apparently it is a really big deal for us to do the same thing and pay for that and pay for the truck. So we decided we probably didn't have any other choice but to go outside of the lane a little bit and take it upon ourselves to provide those people. And I mean, they're all members of our community in good standing, and they all have their fire certs. Some work for Lawrence, some work for Topeka, like Chip was saying.
And it's also not unusual for a police department or a fire department to be hired outside. Just look at schools, just look at other things that people do this for, and they're usually paid by and covered by that entity that's providing this service. I was a police officer, I worked with many of them, especially schools and security at used to be the thing down in Wyandotte County that had all the bands and stuff like that. So that, as long as the insurance is covered there, I can understand what it's doing. The catch, I think, Commissioner Stephen, and I don't mean to put words in his mouth, is we were told it was going to be a fire district. And then we didn't care I didn't really care which one.
And that was the plan.
Okay.
Is it because they're short of staff that they're telling
No, it's
you?
because they're afraid of lawsuits. Because somebody has threatened to sue them personally and sue the board and the township if they were to be seen at our venue.
Oh,
But
We
if
have
there is
letter
a
from-
fire, you're going to call that township fire department, and they will respond, correct?
Correct. Yes. They're
You'll have
residents,
both.
sure.
So you'll have both.
So, I mean, it's almost extra coverage what we're providing.
Right.
I have a letter from Chief Bilquist from Stranger stating that it was because he was called and threatened to be sued, the township, not him personally, but the township, and that's why they backed out of that, because they didn't want local politics to get involved with their relationship with the community.
so I would think it would be a productive thing, if it's okay with the chair, if we have our county administrator kind of, for people that are tuning in, just kind of review the whole history of this, how we got to this point. Is that okay?
If he is prepared to do that, because right now, I mean, I don't want to put him on the spot if he does not have.
Well, just a ballpark, or like a global,
I'll try.
Last week as well. So, but
yeah.
Commissioners, as you know, the applicant built an event center just outside the city limits of Tonganoxie. They applied for an SUP. It was determined that the building was not built to current fire code and that it needed sprinklers. They applied for an exemption through the state fire marshal, who granted it, but then later determined that he did not have the authority to grant it because of our local building codes. So it went to our Building Code Appeal Board. They reviewed the appeal, and they ruled that a sprinkler system is required. The applicant came in and asked that they be allowed to stay open while they put the sprinklers in, and that's what's brought us here.
Has the applicant been cited for violating the terms of our regulations?
At the time that it was determined that they were proceeding with an event center, they had not begun operation, so they started the SUP process before they began operations, and therefore at the time staff did not feel a violation letter was warranted. Obviously, this process has stretched beyond what they anticipated, and now they are in the process of hosting events. So, if that answers your question.
Have you ever issued a letter to them?
I don't know if you mean like a violation letter?
Yes.
No, not to my knowledge have we issued a violation letter to them. Oh, I'm sorry, we did. Once we learned that they were operating without the SUP, we did send them a letter stating that, you're operating an event center without an SUP. Please stop all event center operations until the SUP has been decided.
Did you receive that letter?
That's your car.
Not until the bridal shower up front that we didn't discuss.
Could be.
Where 50 people were.
And we discussed that last week.
Anything further?
Just all the other event centers we have in the county have been granted a variance by the state fire marshal.
I'm not aware of that. That would be a state fire marshal office question.
Does the state fire marshal have jurisdiction over all the event centers?
They would, yes.
Okay. So they've obviously granted variances on that.
We reached out to the state fire marshal's office and asked if we needed to be, because we know there are event centers in the county, and asked if we needed to make make a notice to the fire marshal's office. They said they would have fallen under their building code at the time, and that we didn't need to proceed with any other notification.
And the state fire marshal's building code is the same as ours, the 2006?
Since 2011, they have adopted the 2006 building code.
So any event center since 2011 that we've approved in this county would have had a variance from the state fire marshal. Correct.
I have no idea on
And we don't know what the state fire marshal has done, but they would potentially they would have needed a variance from the state
Right.
fire marshal's office.
Okay. We don't know how many we've approved since then. Probably about 6.
Sounds approximately right.
6 or 7.
Well,
So that
Since
was,
I've been here.
so that's why in 2019 after the tornado, that when Elm Grove Church was rebuilding, that the state fire marshal then required them to put sprinklers in their facility.
Correct.
And that's kind of what brought us where we're at, to adopt codes.
And I want to make clear that I don't object. I did not object to the event center. I think it's something that the business is needed. That my vote and my take on the whole situation is that the opportunity was available in advance to have the sprinkling system put in, but the applicant made kind of banked on the hope that the Board of County Commissioners or the state fire marshal or whoever would give an exemption for this. But then when our Board of Appeals denied that exemption, in my opinion, I am going with our Board of Appeals because that's why we have them. They are the people that we have counted on to make that decision. And they said that they wanted that there was not going to be an exemption for having to have the sprinkling, and then so that impacts my decision whether or not to move forward with the resolution. And so that's just me. So. But I think I'm very consistent with that. I am very consistent when we have policy, when we have codes, if we have statutes or policy, I like to abide by those policies. So that's just me as a commissioner, but that does not change what the decision making of the entire body, and whatever that decision is, if it isn't in line with my opinion, I will support the decision of our commission as a board.
I believe I mentioned last week, and I'd like to reiterate that originally, back in 2020, I think it was, a special use permit was approved 5-0 by the board. They thought they were still operating under that special use permit when they built it. So it wasn't a matter of just ignoring it and not putting them in on purpose.
Excuse me for just a second. Is there not an email that exists where that was withdrawn?
My understanding is they did not withdraw. They said they sent an email to my client, Mr. Lynch, and said, if you want to withdraw it, give us something on your letterhead, which he never submitted. So he never did do that. They found out later that it was basically expired.
Was that application for an SUP for an event center?
It was. My understanding it was, anyway. I didn't represent him on that at that time, but it's my understanding is that it was, yes.
I thought it was an agricultural. I thought it was for an agricultural.
So we need some clarification from staff. What?
The original SUP application was for an event center, very much the same application that you received for this SUP application.
But there was a withdrawal.
From my understanding, our office was contacted about them no longer wishing to continue operation of the event center. I don't know if there was a follow-up email or a letter ever sent to our office. Staff made the determination that the SUP is no longer in effect because as of 1 year after the approval date, that event center was never created, and therefore that SUP approval was null and void.
So 1 year elapsed.
1 year elapsed.
Commissioners, regardless of the SUP, if the previous SUP was granted and still in place, this building then for sure would have had to have been constructed with sprinklers.
Right.
It was built after fire code.
Right, that's what I was trying to get
The SUP did not
at.
waive fire code. So that's granted or not granted, that building would have been built to fire code if it was going to be used for an event center, even if the old SUP was still in place or if you adopt this new SUP, it would have had to have had the fire suppression.
Were you aware of the 2006 codes?
Absolutely.
But that's
Were you not informed by staff?
I don't believe so.
Typically, when you do an SUP, you do inform the applicants that they fall under the codes, correct?
Since the codes have been adopted, yes, we typically notify. Furthermore, on our application forms for the building permits, you have to check that you will comply with the 2006 International Building Codes as adopted by the county before you can sign off on that permit and we accept it.
My understanding is the original SUP was issued before you adopted the building codes.
But not the building permit.
No, the
No,
building permit for this
that's very-
structure was applied for in June of 2022. The building codes went
No, I
into
would
effect
agree.
January 1st of 2021.
So that's why I said it's not the SUP that is impacting the fire code. That was already in place, regardless of an SUP or no SUP. If you were building an event center, it had to be built to the 2006 building codes.
But our original SUP did not require building codes, and that's the one we thought we were working.
The SUP does not impact
building
building codes.
permit
The
does,
building
though.
permit does.
And that's what I did not.
There was also, my understanding is there was also some issue with that. Apparently, whoever they sent up as their general contractor to apply for the building permit, my understanding is he was told that she should apply for an accessory building permit at this time, and then you can switch over to commercial. I don't know who told him that, if it really happened or not, but that's what I've been told.
But
So.
that's not what we're responsible for determining.
Well, bottom line is, my people are going to put sprinklers in. We discussed that last week. They've got one bid already. They had another company that was promised to give them a bid last Friday. Didn't come through. They promised it for Monday. They didn't get it. Now they're promising it by the end of the week. So, as you know, with things are busy.
But so the bottom line to me is if anybody else came here and was requesting this, they would have to follow the same rules as everyone else. And we are being asked to bend over backwards to make this happen when the rules were there and you've already been cited for violations.
I guess my understanding is I thought we crossed that bridge last week, and the only thing we're here today for is to find out whether or not we can make a slight change to what's already been approved by the board to say instead of being Stranger Township Fire Department's truck, it's the Lynch's truck.
I think it's an enormous change because it was the dependence upon the local fire department that we were going to have the trust that they have total authority and certifications. And I mean, I don't want to get to be in the business as the county of having to certify your truck. You're asking us to say that we approve that you went out and purchased a fire truck, and now you're going to ask us to be the body. We're going to override our codes committee that made a decision, and we're going to certify whether this truck is up to the job. And I don't think that's the role of the government here.
Mr. Stephen, we are not asking you to certify anything. We are going to take it upon ourselves to certify that truck, if that's what you are going to require.
You're asking us to say that this is an all right alternative.
We have been left with no other choice but to handle this on our own, because we cannot count on anybody that can. Let me find a PC way to say this. We can't count on anybody within the county that somebody can get to and to intimidate. So this is where we are. We have purchased a fire truck.
I just wish we hadn't scheduled events ahead of the...
And I know that's where your issue lies, and I totally understand that. We started issuing, before we started planning events, before we even realized that we didn't have the SUV, before we even started building.
We're still in the timeline to have those the system put in place.
Absolutely.
Sprinkler system. Okay.
By the end of the year should be no problem.
Yes.
And
what are they indicating? You gave me a copy of this, but I wasn't seeing the bid,
that's
the
all
dates.
Once we get a second, Mr. Blanch's plan is once he gets a second bid on it, he's going to go ahead and tell them, finish the engineered drawings and hire him and get it done.
We still don't have a second bid?
This company has, that's the one I just mentioned earlier, that somebody promised us a second bid on Friday. They're promising one on Friday, then on Monday, and now they're saying this week. He says if he doesn't get it by the end of the week, he's just going to probably go with...
But we know this has been going on for weeks. I mean, why are we just now getting to the point that we're getting a second bid?
People just aren't presenting them to us. We've requested them, but that's just contractors. I think Ms. Cos would know that.
We have been waiting on a particular one in Kansas City for 4 weeks to come out and get us a bid.
And once again, if we just go back to the whole concept of fire watches, most fire watches are simply the owner providing a couple of individuals to do nothing but walk around and have a cell phone ready to call the fire department. We're going to have firemen, off-duty firemen, who are there ready to call the fire department as well as fight the fire. And most fire watches don't have a fire truck on site, certified or uncertified. We've got a fire truck on site that is functional. It may not be certified. It might be certified. We don't know yet, but we'll be happy to get it certified, just to provide extra documentation. But so basically, I think we're going to actually step above and beyond what a normal fire watch.
Well, I was told by this firefighter that's in my district that a fire watch is typically for when you have a sprinkler system that's in need of repair or has been depressurized for whatever reason. Then you are fully responsible for the fire watch until such time as the sprinkler system has been repaired.
It's my understanding that's one of the reasons. I think there's several times you can have fire watches.
Well, that's what he told me.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I've read that too, and that's that. Or when something's not working right, they say sometimes when fire alarm systems aren't working properly, when there's a lot of false alarms, when there's other reasonable reasons beyond that too. Just say they want somebody, somebody just decides they need to have one. So there's several reasons for that. Yes. And basically, our position is we're just, you told us last week we can do it until we get the fire sprinkler system in. And that's what I'm asking, just continue with that, but please allow us to just use our fire truck and our own fire personnel from other districts who are certified firefighters.
You made the motion, right? Remember what your motion was?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly what it was. I know I wanted
to. I think the motion was Township Fire Department. I think. Yes.
It might have been, Doug. I don't. I felt comfortable with the issues that were addressed on this. And let me just say one thing too. Laws are on the books, absolutely to be followed. There's no doubt about it. But none of us in here walk on water. And sometimes you have to look at a situation and say, what's the best for this situation? I am not happy about not having a sprinkler system in there right now. But I am okay if we've got the things in place to protect life. As I told you last time, as a police officer, I've handled dead infants from fires. I've handled all this stuff. So if I thought there was any way in the world that this is not up to par, you wouldn't even be talking. I wouldn't even be talking to you now. But in my opinion, they've dotted the line, crossed the T's on what they need to do. As long as everything we're being told is up. You got certified firefighters who know more about it than anybody. You got a truck that's going to put out anything, and you're still going to call the fire station to come out there. If they weren't going to put in the sprinkler system in 6 to 8 months, I wouldn't even consider it. But I believe they're going to spend the money to do that. Now, am I happy y'all did this backwards? Absolutely, I'm not happy about that. But at the same time, things happen. That's all I have.
That was just your motion, if you wanted to
Okay.
replace words or anything.
Well, today we're actually adopting a resolution. Does the resolution need any changes?
Commissioners, the resolution is drafted last week, and it was drafted on Thursday, and I did it because to meet your Friday deadline. If you look at Section 3 of the resolution, it references Township Fire Department.
Right.
So that would need to be changed to allow for some provision of a private firefighting vehicle with certified firefighters retained by the applicant.
Have you checked with the city of Tonganoxie? Do they provide these services?
I don't think they will step into their area. I mean,
Because they're not going to get in the way of the fire district.
There's always mutual aid. I mean,
but I think they go and help. I think they help each other out like most fire departments do. You know.
Is there any other discussion? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, discussion?
I'm just going to say my position is going to be I'm not going to vote for this unless we can get an actual fire department.
But we can have that discussion if we can get a motion in so that we can discuss that at that point in time. But before we vote, but I need a motion.
Got it?
You got it?
No, I'm still reading through this resolution.
Maybe we can have
Madam
discussion.
Chair, I move that we approve Resolution 2023-4 with a change in the resolution as a private fire truck with off-duty firefighters. Strike the Township Fire Department from it as being fire watch.
Your motion, do I have a second?
David, get you.
Oh,
Commissioner Smith, members of the commission, if you could, because part of this resolution requires a subsequent act, i.e. the installation of a sprinkling system. It's referred to as a fire suppression system, but it also refers to your building codes, which would require a sprinkler system, that the motion be stated as a conditional approval of Resolution 2023-4, subject to the conditions set forth therein.
Okay.
you want to withdraw your motion and start again?
Sure, I do. I'm going to
Okay.
withdraw that. Did I get a second? Okay. I move that we approve Resolution 2023-4 and strike the Township Fire Department and use private fire truck and township or off-duty firefighters, certified off-duty firefighters, and until said time, the applicant can install sprinklers, and I believe we had a deadline at the end of 2023.
Commissioners, the
Contingent.
resolution as I drafted set a 6-month deadline subject to extension upon good cause.
Okay.
However, it's your prerogative. You could change it to the expiration of 2023 or 6 months, however you would choose. I think the idea was to put a motivating factor upon the applicant by putting a 6-month deadline.
Okay. And that was my motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion.
I'd like to, before we do further discuss it, I would like to offer, and I don't know where we would fit this in, but an amendment that the pumper truck must be certified per regulations.
That needs to be included in his,
Yeah, I think so.
Can we
It's
offer
in
an
my
amendment to
motion.
it's
the?
not in his motion, so that's,
Go ahead.
Commissioners, I do not like making amendments to resolutions on the fly. I think that it should be, the resolution being approved should be what's being approved with the language that you all want in it. That's me. I think we end up with mistakes that later come back to haunt us. So my preference would be, if you all are going to approve this resolution, that you have the county councilor or senior county councilor amend it with the language that you want, so that it's a simple motion of move to conditionally approve resolution 2023.
you want to withdraw your motion?
I'll withdraw then,
I'll withdraw the
I'll
second.
and then we'll table this till next
And
week.
can I ask the applicant a question?
Yes.
Do you have any events this weekend? Okay. So if we table this till next week, it won't.
The certification.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Then
Table-
it would need to be tabled till next week and give the correct language.
So is it consensus that that's okay to put that provision about the testing of the pumper truck?
Madam Chair, could I ask a point of clarification from Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Understand, would perhaps appropriate language be that the firefighting vehicle meet all certifications and inspection requirements of the state fire marshal?
That'd be fine.
That's-
Did he withdraw?
Yeah, he did. Okay.
All right, then I move that we table resolution 2023-4 for 1 week.
A second. One comment on that too. I think that's a good point that Commissioner Stephen brought out about and the way David's broke that up about certification on that vehicle. I feel more comfortable with that.
I have a motion and a second to table. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Okay. Tabled until a week from today. All right. Now, I'm going to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-6 regarding the formation of Leavenworth County Fire District Number 2. And I understand that there's legal counsel that would like to have something to say, and then there's some other discussion that we need to have prior to voting. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Eric Westlander. I'm an attorney with Stevens & Brand Law Firm. I am here on behalf of Reno and Sherman Townships. I've had the privilege of working with them over the past few months on the proposal you see before you to form a fire district, essentially to formalize and lay the groundwork for a long-term relationship, combining those two townships into one fire district. And I'd like to thank the people that we've had over the last few months turning out to meetings. We've had a good amount of public input. Commissioner Steben has been present at a couple of the meetings, and appreciate also Janet Klasinski's help with crunching some of the numbers on that. As you will see, we have submitted a proposed resolution and a proposed interlocal agreement. The high-level picture of it is essentially that there would be the creation through this board's action of the fire district. You all would, as envisioned by this agreement, delegate the day-to-day operations of that and the ability to appoint fire district board of trustees essentially to the township boards, those two township boards, and the city of Linwood, and then the governing body of that district would be comprised of people appointed from the membership of those elected bodies, with the idea that those involved in planning this want the people who are running the district to be accountable to the public, to be elected representatives and not appointed non-office holding representatives. One of the key purposes of this is to cement the relationship and allow it to grow over the long term. So you'll see we've proposed a 25-year term with automatic 25-year renewals. We've asked for approval to levy a tax not to exceed 5.7 mils as the baseline funding for this district. And the key point there is that this would not be in addition to, this would replace any township tax levied for purposes of fire protection. There are various other aspects to this, and I've had I understand you all are just seeing this, I think, for the first time, so we wanted to come before you today, present it to you, see what questions, concerns you had, and I'm happy to work with the County Councilor's Office going forward in terms of resolving any questions or concerns that you have.
I've got a question, Madam Chair, if it's okay. I was on the formation of Fire District 1. I'm also was part of Fire District 1 going away. And I see most of the issues have been addressed in this thing, but you need to make sure everybody's clear on what they're signing up for, because if somebody gets sideways, it gets ugly. It really does. On one part of it, I see the agreement for how many members are going to be on the board. That was all brought together on the committee that's part of this and decided there'll be 3 or 4 in one and 2 for one part of it. Is that a true statement?
Correct, sir. Yes, what we proposed to you is approved by, I think it was a week ago, this past Monday, the joint board of the 2 townships. They've had some discussions of, do we want to propose a 5-member board, a 7-member board, and where they ultimately came down is you would have 3, essentially the township boards for Reno and Sherman, and 1 appointee from the city of Linwood to make up the 7th. And your point is well taken about, we've certainly studied the issues regarding the potential dissolution and breakup.
That's where it got really complicated. Sometimes cities or districts take off, you don't expect it. I expect Leavenworth County to really start flourishing and growing. And sometimes when that happens, if you're out so far out as 27 years, you may have to go back and renegotiate that. And I would hope nobody would have to go through what the townships and Lansing went through just to try to get it resolved all the way up to Kansas Supreme Court. I would see a lot of this language. I think I know some of the attorney that wrote some of this, a little on this maybe, and it stood up in a challenging court. And I know this is moving on down the line, but I just wanted to, there's one thing on it, and I know that's on the second one, and excuse me for jumping out of order, Madam Chair, but on your establishment of a joint board, on the, let me get the right one here. Yeah. There's one that says, just give me one sec.
I believe you may be looking for section 9.
Sure.
Yes, it is. Section 9.
Oh, insurance.
Yeah. And I know this is a little fun thing, but it says, for the purpose of this agreement, the Board of County Commissioners agrees to identify and hold harmless to Reno and Sherman County. If this is on you, why are we doing this?
It's a good question. That language is, to my understanding, transplanted from the Fire District 1.
That's what caught my attention.
Fair enough. What I see it as, and it's a good question, and this is one of those I suspect that we may need to have more back and forth on. What I see this is under the Tort Claims Act, you're not going to be held liable as a governmental entity for failure to provide fire protection service, put out a fire, or something like that. I see that one provision 9A that I think you're referring to as just saying that you, as the Board of County Commissioners, will not sue the trustees for some reason if there is something like that happens. That's just clarifying that there would not be a personal lawsuit against them in recognition that under the Tort Claims Act you're not going to have liability for something, God forbid, failure to put out a fire or something like that. That's been my best theory as to why that was in there. I don't think it changes the ultimate fact that you create this board and the Board of Trustees comes out of that. They are ultimately, first and foremost, responsible for the insurance requirements, the day-to-day operations, understanding that it is, through this process that we've proposed, it's a part of the county, and it becomes an instrumentality of the county as well. So I think coordinating the insurance requirements and making sure that you all are satisfied with what the fire district would have in place for that. Beyond that, I'm not sure I'm addressing exactly your question, other than that is something I know that has been raised, and we're happy to continue discussing, and if there's anything that needs to be tweaked there, I'm sure that we can take that back to the township boards if it needs to be.
Counselor?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this commission has steadfastly and for decades supported the local fire departments, specifically the volunteer township fire departments. And you've specifically stated that an ultimate goal you have is public safety. And part of that is through the providing of public fire protection. That being said, and knowing your support for the efforts by Sherman Township, Reno Township, and the city of Linwood to form a fire district, I would ask that you consider tabling this matter for 1 week to allow Ms. Brown and I to confer with Mr. Westlander to iron out the details of this agreement, and if at all possible, bring it back to you next week for your consideration. There is an issue of the liability insurance. There are some other things. Commissioner Smith and I were integrally involved in the formation of Fire District Number 1, going to the state legislature to get it done. But we have a fresh set of eyes to look at this as well, and I'd like to ensure that your final action is as proof as possible to allow the townships and the city to proceed forward with this fire district. So we believe 1 week would be sufficient. When looking at the statutory requirements for the notice of hearings on the adoption of the resolution, if the board were to approve this matter, on the 12th, the publication dates of the 15th, 22nd, and 29th could take place, with a final hearing on the resolution to take place sometime after Wednesday, May 10th. And that would meet the budgetary requirement of having a finalization of the formation of the fire district prior to July 1. I don't care to go to July 1. I'd like to have this matter finalized before the expiration of the month of May, just out of abundance of caution.
One thing I'd add too, I hope that's all right with y'all, is I'm totally in agreement of forming this. I think this is a great idea. I'm just trying to share some of the lessons I've learned on going down so it can be as smooth as Fire District 2 as possible. So I have that.
I have one. So the sooner the better, correct? Because these townships have got to come up with a budget, or the fire district will have to come up with a budget and a mill levy for the 2024 budget. Okay.
Mr. Smith, by statute, the budget of the fire district has to be submitted to the county clerk prior to July 1. So if that July 1 tolling date passes, and obviously there can't be a budget if there's no fire district. If that passes, it kicks over to fiscal year 2025, actually.
So we're trying to get this so they can have a budget of 2024, right, correct?
Yes.
Right.
And first time I talked to Mr. Sowers on this, I said, government moves pretty slow. I don't know if you'll get it done. And I think you guys must have met more than just once a month to get this done.
Yeah.
You guys have really worked hard to get this done.
Yep.
I mean, there's so much involved with this. I didn't think they could do it, but I apologize for underestimating you.
Yeah.
So I'm good with next week.
And it needs to be next
and
week. I don't want it to go past that.
I support the fire district.
I'm asking for a week. If for some unforeseen reason at this point in time it can't be done, I'd still ask for an additional week, but I believe we can have this matter hammered out for your approval next week.
Okay.
But you're going to have to hammer it out by Friday to get it on the agenda.
There are several issues that need to be resolved, but the majority, 90% of this interlocal agreement would meet our approval for your.
And I don't want to see
your
us.
approval.
I don't want to see us not get this right the first time around, because we've been down that road already. When
yes, ma'am. I rode that horse.
Buttoned up tight, so we need to make sure that we get this right, not just for us, but for the townships and for the city of Linwood. I mean, this needs to be done exactly correctly so that we aren't looking 25 years down the road with a mess.
In a lawsuit with
Right. So
attorney fees with
that's why
buy a fire truck.
this is a good idea to go ahead and make sure we agree on the language and that it has all been worked through. And I hope you have the time to sit down with our council and iron out the details. And
Commissioners, it doesn't have to be tabled because it's not like a public hearing today. So what I would say is I think that the county councilor is confident that he can get this done by tomorrow afternoon. But just in case it isn't, at the staff level, we'll make the call, and if we need to move past another week, we will.
will let us know. Okay.
We're still good on the timetable. That's important.
We just want to make sure that we meet the timetable that gets them to what they need to do, and that the clerk can work with them to do what they need to do. And Commissioner Stephen, you had another question.
Yeah, a couple. Well, I just want to make a couple comments. Number one, for folks that are observing and watching this happen, the tax rates that are going to go into effect are going to be approximately the same tax rates that are in effect now. That's going to be approximate. And the fire district will fall under the protest petition requirements when any mills are established by them. The citizens will have the right to make a protest, just like at a township level. So this is not anything that changes as far as your ability to control your own taxes there in the southern part of the county. This is just going to improve fire service down in that area. Also, representation and accountability. I think that's a really important thing that's in this, that is a difference between the Fire District 1 and Fire District 2. The members are all elected. The township board members are all elected. If you don't like what you're getting on the fire district board, you can decide to make a change. And it is the voters that can make that change. And the same thing with the city council member from Linwood. He's also an elected representative. So these folks, a different and additional layer of accountability that we have. So, and the other thing I would ask, just for consideration, when we get to the public hearing stage in May, if it would be okay with the members, if we could take that down to the community center in Linwood to have the hearing for the fire district.
We don't have the equipment to live stream that, so I'm not sure that would be a good idea. I'm just, I
that
don't
would put us closer to folks.
Well, but we might be able to figure out another system, maybe trying to get Zoom or something where we can look at that perhaps. I don't know. We can ask Mark, but we need to make sure that it's an official meeting place, and that we follow our protocols that we have insisted that we allow.
I'd be happy to work with staff to try to figure that out, but I think that would be if
I don't want to
could.
make that commitment. Let's.
David keeps raising his hand.
Yeah, David, please go ahead.
Well, commissioners, you could certainly, or Commissioner Stephen could even chair the meeting. You could have an informational meeting in the city of Linwood on this matter, and have your formal hearing on the proposed resolution here at the courthouse.
So, well, that's potential. I just want to make sure that it's all aired out, and so it's quite a drive for some folks.
Well, again, you could take an informational meeting to the city of Linwood, and again, as I continually harp upon, citizens can provide input to you via email or letter, which, quite frankly, I'm surprised more people don't use because it has more impact than verbal testimony. But you can certainly invite input from the citizens within the proposed fire district. You could conduct an informational meeting, but I would encourage you to have the official meeting on the resolution here at the
county
courthouse.
seat. So that's okay. And so we're going to do this, table this till next week. Not table. It's just
no action.
No action is going to be taken on this until.
The intent is to bring it back to you next week. Okay. If, as Mark stated to you, there's an unforeseen obstacle, it would be the following week. But I do want you to know that we are cognizant of the impending deadline.
I wouldn't have a problem having a special meeting if we have to solve this, because I know the townships have had many special meetings to get us to this
Which is not a problem
point.
for me as well.
I'll be here. Think we need to be here on a different day.
I agree.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
do we want to continue with the interlocal agreement? Or
That was all discussed.
Do we
I brought that up.
Don't need to come together, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make certain that we made that
Yeah.
clear, that we would not be hearing the
Yeah.
interlocal agreement motion. Okay. Moving on, presentations and discussion, which we already, go ahead.
You have a good segue point here for me, so if I could, when you're talking about meeting offsite. Last week, the board discussed having joint meetings with some of the cities. So I did reach out to the city administrators in Basehor and Tonganoxie, since those are the two bigger cities that we have not yet met with. We met with
Right.
Lansing last year. So they both responded, and I wanted to make sure that you are good with meeting at their location, and it would be an evening meeting. Both of them proposed for their normal meetings.
Yeah.
So one would be a Monday evening, and one would be a Wednesday evening. And just wanted to make sure you're okay with that.
I have no problem with that.
And I'll send you the dates that they've provided, but it looks like, I think May 10th was one of them.
Okay.
The other one would be later in April. So just wanted to make sure that you're on board with
That's fine with me.
Tonganoxie's the first Monday and the fourth.
Yeah, and I think Tonganoxie is first.
Probably that Basehor's the second Wednesday. And the fourth.
Basis would be before one of their work sessions.
Right.
That's
May
fine.
10th.
Mark, speaking on that, did you want from the county commissioners any agenda items or things you'd want to talk about?
That's always welcome.
Yeah.
I appreciate that if we can have some items that you want to discuss when we meet with them. I did, when I reached out to Tonganoxie, I told them that I felt pretty confident that 222nd Street was going to be one of the
Yeah.
agenda items, but I wasn't sure about the other ones. But I just wanted to get on their schedule.
Right.
So if before those, and I'll send you those dates, but if before that, if you could provide to me any requested agenda items, I'll put those together and bring it back to an open board meeting so you all can decide if that's your decision.
Sounds good.
I'd say Tongie's the 222nd is the most important thing
Sounds good. Okay.
and the most
That's all I
time
have.
critical.
Right. Well,
And you'd went. Oh, you'll probably
Oh.
report on that. You're going to report on that, so I won't.
But
speak
it
on
does,
Okay,
it does
I'll-
overlap.
Go ahead and start with you. We
Oh,
can kind of do presentations.
for
or
the,
discussion.
Commissioner Cos and I attended Keith Rickard's retirement. We have a JCAB meeting tomorrow,
Yes, we do.
and I believe that's it.
Commissioner
Oh, I'm
Stevens?
missing something.
You always feel that way, huh?
Yeah,
Town hall.
yeah, that's political.
You have anything?
Oh, yeah, I do. I thought.
Okay.
Of course he does.
Sure you were done.
Yeah, I was done. I was back.
I did go to the Tonganoxie City Council meeting, and I presented them with the request that we have a meeting with them to talk about 222nd Street. And I'm hopeful that we'll, before that meeting, maybe we can have some alternatives presented to us for that, what are various alternatives. And that was a good meeting, and I visited with, I was at the KDHE hearing for the local farmer that's at
Oh,
the
did you go last
application.
night? I didn't make it.
I did.
Didn't
It
make
was-
it. I was trying to get to there.
It was a good hearing. I think the main thing is the neighbors have to get along with neighbors. That's the main thing. And that's all I have.
So when you're talking about alternatives, you talking about funding, or are you talking about road design alternatives? Because I know we got that one estimate.
Well,
for
just
a
I'm thinking of funding. What are our alternatives? Do we have? I mean, and put them out on the table and say, okay, the city needs to help to this extent. The county, and here's some. Maybe there's bonding alternatives. Maybe there's other grant alternatives. I want to know what are our options.
Well, for applying for grants, I don't know if the time is going to work, because the city probably should have been applying for grants because it's their industrial park.
Well,
and
I don't
if we
know.
and we're probably not going to get any grants, but if we're talking about bonding, it depends on what happens at the legislature with sales tax.
Yeah.
We can't bond if we can't make the payments, because the sales tax would have to make the payments.
If we can just get some alternatives so that we can, when we're having this
Alternative
discussion.
financing, is that what we're looking at?
I guess I don't know what you call it.
Well,
It's a real big issue. I mean, that particular road, especially with another project potentially coming in, it's going to be a real huge issue. That's going to be pretty immediate.
So, but I guess your early discussions, they understand maybe, and they will be willing to participate.
They're willing to participate in a meeting.
Okay. All right.
Anything else, Commissioner Stevens? Commissioner Culberson?
So I had Easton City Council meeting Monday night. One of the issues they went over was animal control. They're having some issues, so I'm working with the sheriff to figure out some of those things as far as enforcing their local animal ordinances over the county ordinances. So I'm supposed to meet with Andy and talk to them about that. Last night at Leavenworth City Council meeting, they had the regional transportation presentation, which I think we're going to hear again. And then I'm on the task force with Karen Tyson working on tax relief issues, and we kind of shift gears this week because of the bills that came up. So we mostly talked about the exempt veterans bill, which, I explained to her, as near as I can guess, Leavenworth County would have to raise our mill levy about 5 mils just to remain revenue neutral. Mm-hmm. So it's a very bad idea for Leavenworth County. And then the last thing was I met with our insurance attorney to discuss scheduling the engineer inspections for the landfill in Easton. So that's getting on the schedule next week, I think.
I have a couple of things, Madam Chair. Last week, Lansing mainly discussed their library. If y'all have never been out to the city of Lansing's library, and Terry, who I had the privilege of bringing on when I was out there as mayor, it's just an unbelievable thing. Libraries have changed so much since the day that I went to school and what they can provide and stuff like that. The second thing is Lansing reached out to me since I was mayor at the time, and they're having a ribbon cutting for the Fourth and Eisenhower project with the city of Leavenworth on April 13th at 3:30, and everybody will be meeting at the south side of the Quick Trip if any other county commissioners would like to attend.
April 13th?
Yes, sir.
What time?
3:30.
3:30.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then I'll go, let's see, I attended the transportation meeting for the city of Leavenworth last week, and just letting people know that the official kickoff for the transit system in the city of Leavenworth will be April the 10th, and
That's cool.
the public is invited. We will be invited to, or should be invited to attend, or should be hearing something from them, but it's really a good thing for the city. And I think we had the thing with Keith Rickard for the retirement party this past week, and we have JCAP, and I'm also have a transit authority meeting and strategic planning on Tuesday that will take place all day long Tuesday, and I think that's.
We have a couple more committees for you.
I don't think so.
And just one more thing is just a by the way, as the commissioner, I have relocated my office to the Cushing facility as of this past week, and so I think it was something that I felt really strongly that we have a commissioner available at that premises, because we have a large contingency of people who receive services or come through those doors every week. And so my office is going to be, I'll have office hours and be available to our aging population, which is over 55, by the way, according to the Council on Aging. But I will have an office there and already have several people who are wanting to meet with me who are our aging population. So I think it's going to be a good thing. You're welcome to stop by. And
Mark, are we charging her rent for that office?
And my office is better than your office.
And
I'm sure it is.
Well, she should be paying her rent. It's nice.
And I'm one of those things you say, I'm aging quickly. And the other thing is, too, Vicki, we just couldn't take it anymore. We're glad you got this office so you're up. I'm just.
Well, I'm hoping
old
that
office
one of our other commissioners would like to join me there because it is a really nice place. And
I am kind
and
of jealous.
The individuals so far that I have met in the hallways and things are thrilled that we have a commissioner there available for them, and they feel like that's a huge acknowledgement. And so I can go through and check on the Meals on Wheels or go participate on that. I'm going to be doing an exercise activity next Monday at 8:30 a.m. I mean, just
It's cool.
it's a cool thing.
activity?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
We're all available, or eligible except for
You want us to go?
Yeah, the rest,
That's
no,
true.
I'm 55, I'm over there.
Oh, are you?
Okay, so we are all
Okay.
welcome to participate, and so
Yeah,
just
we'll do that.
I
so
don't
you
know
know.
if I can
You want us to come in
Alright.
our, you want us to come in our tights so we can?
Oh,
Well, if you want to
geez.
come with your tights, you're welcome to. I'll come in my sweats. So, we're good.
I was wondering.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Voting aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.